And we're recording. So firstly, Adam, I'd like to say a huge thank you for taking the time to agree to this interview. As one of our recent TDSL live program alumni, you've completed our 5-week course, and it's a great pleasure to meet you in this way.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I understand it's very early in the morning there for you, isn't it? It's, what is it now, 5:20 in the morning in Cambodia?
Yes.
Wonderful. So we're at completely the opposite end of the spectrum time-wise here. But it feels like you're just sitting in the same room as me. Your audio is very clear. I can see you very clearly. So I'm looking forward to asking you some questions about your experience of the TDSL live program. So I'm going to start off, please, by asking you, before you were introduced to the dialogue of self-liberation, how would you describe the kind of challenges that you may have been facing prior to being introduced to the dialogue of self-liberation?
About that, I guess. I mean, you know, the normal challenges of trying to do the best you can at work, try and be the best parent you can be, and you know what you want to do, and then the more presence of mind you can bring to every situation, the better everything works out. And it's just I guess you could say, a constant struggle to do what you need to do to the best of your ability, not let the clutter get in the way, right?
And what do you mean by the clutter?
You know, if you just pay attention, you can do whatever you need to do. And if you let your mind run its own course, then you'll find all kinds of reasons not to do. I shouldn't say that. In the past, it has been the case that the mind has run and then been less mindful of what needs to be done, and that in the past has caused delays or other forms of, I guess you could say, friction.
Yes, I understand very well what you mean by that from personal experience when I was first introduced to the dialogue of self-liberation by my teacher. So what is it particularly that you find interesting or appealing about the methodology and the purpose of the dialogue of self-liberation? What is it appeals to you?
I liked that it was very low in information content. In other words, there weren't a whole lot of principles and facts. It's a very concise program, and it's just taking those. You could probably bullet point less than a page worth of propositions, and then it's just pay attention to the words of those things and do it. And then everything else is I guess you could say, kind of play on your emotions to get on with it. But there aren't, maybe it's like a paragraph of actual things you need to learn. Like, don't talk about the past as if it were the present or the future. Swish, the visualization. There aren't that many things. And then there's keep a beginner's mind of, like, just keep your eyes open and focus on this stuff. And the other qualifications, like, don't be concerned that this repeats. There's a reason for it, that kind of a thing. But there's very little information. But then it's quite challenging it has been challenging in the past to fully integrate that small amount of information. And I understood it as, really, you've got this much information, and then you've got 10 pages of a PDF that really just get you to try and focus your mind on that and give what necessary justification you need, you know, a little bit of science and research, etc. I think it's just there to, I guess you could say, to dispel doubt. You need, I think it would be difficult to receive, you know, 4 sentences and be like, this is it, psychologically. But you don't really need, if there's, I don't know, if there's 10,000 words in all the PDFs combined, you only need like 200 of them. But you need the rest of the, you need something to get your mind focused. Same with the calls. You just psychologically, it wouldn't work to be like, don't talk about the past before the present or the future. You need the calls, and people tell stories, and you share struggles, etc. And you need that to take it in and incorporate it. So that's kind of rambling there, but that's a long way of saying I appreciated the fact that the principles were simple and concise, yet profound enough that they require a sustained effort to take seriously and to master and incorporate into life.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm really delighted to hear that that's your experience of the information. And maybe just to let people know, could you describe what you do for a living, please?
I am a science teacher out here in Siem Reap, Cambodia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam. We've got quite a diverse range of people that have been through the live program now, from all different kind of backgrounds and areas of experience and expertise and study. So it's great to hear the diverse range of different types of people that are benefiting from this. So could you describe to me, please, what your experience of the progression of the course was? How clearly was the information presented?
I thought the information was very clear from the start, and intellectually it made sense right away. As I said, there isn't a lot of information to take in, and there isn't much that changes from dialogue to dialogue. So everything clicked immediately, and then it's just that process of integrating the ideas and seeing the ideas in action in your own thoughts, in your own speech, and in the speech of others. And that kind of practice takes time, but it's a bit like learning to play football. Like, you have to hit the ball in the net. Okay, got it. But then it takes some considerable time and effort to master the requisite skills to achieve that simple goal.
To play well.
Yeah, it's not hard to understand how to play, but if you want to understand how to play well, there are quite a few nuances and subtleties that we just finished. I imagine that understanding will continue to develop for a long time.
Indeed, this is why we refer to the end is the beginning.
Right.
Yes,
it's like getting a driver's license, right? Like, you only learn how to drive once you got the license, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the start of something. It's an adventure. So with regard to the audio material and the creative visualization exercises and guided contemplations, what was your experience of these and how did you benefit from them?
Well, I thought the talking out loud is a useful experience. I should do it more and go back to those. I noticed I did have a little bit of resistance of, like, I put my hand around it and start talking. It's like, how loudly am I going to talk? And there is that sense of you have to kind of take the plunge and not keep the stuff at an arm's length away, but you do have to. If you say it out loud, you will take it more seriously, and you could feel it. I don't. How would you even put it? You get some kind of just strange internal sensations of saying these things out loud, And I thought that was valuable. I'd like to go back to that. I liked the swish. I found myself practicing. I didn't do anything with the tree, the nest visualization.
Yes.
And so I suppose I should go back to that and give it another try. It didn't resonate, but maybe I was just tired when I listened to it. I should try that again. But the swish seemed intuitively, at first glance, it seemed like this might be really useful. I don't know. I guess that the other creative visualization of like, let me just like see something new, see where you're going. Maybe that one's just harder.
I would recommend to you to revisit all of them, because I have no doubt that when you do, you'll gain more from them, because your understanding will have developed significantly from when you first encountered them.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. Well,
And
I will do that.
yeah, with regards to the tree of perspective, this is something that you can apply to any kind of memory of anything that's been disturbing, upsetting, challenging, traumatic.
It's like a
And
reframing of the story. Is that right?
it's like beginning to view the memory through a different lens, so that you gain control over how you feel whilst you're remembering those particular things that may have happened in your past. So they no longer have the memories no longer have the power to influence how we think or feel or act or react from now on.
You're a little bit changing the color filter on the memory.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. That's a lovely way of putting it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess I had heard of something similar in terms of reframing the narrative. This is a little different. This is, I guess.
In many respects, this particular exercise is about reframing not only the way we view a memory that may have been difficult, but how we feel as we view the memory. It transforms the feeling experience that we feel in the now when we review those old memories. And this is very important because we're feeling beings, us humans.
Right.
It's not just the realms of the intellect that we're dealing with here. We are feeling creatures. So we need to work on transforming the way we feel when we remember certain things.
Right. Okay. You know, that makes a lot of sense. I'll have to go back and listen to that again then.
I look forward to hearing what your experiences of revisiting the exercises are once you have done. So please keep me posted about this.
Sure.
Thank you. So how do you find the practicality of the dialogue of self-liberation in your daily life? What difference do you find this is making in the way you experience your daily life now?
Well, I'm certainly more sensitive to self-limiting speech in myself and others. And I guess it's kind of wait and see what happens with that newfound sensitivity. But I've certainly noticed it in myself. I do notice like, you're saying something that's kind of cutting a wall, chopping your own potential there. And I hear it a lot in other people. I hear it in my students, a lot of, I can't do this, I don't understand, I'm never going to be able to do this. I have no idea what you're saying. These kind of things where it's like, and I don't know what's been on the brain the last couple days really has been, how do I get others to see this, and should I point it out directly, or are there other ways of getting at it? I didn't want to tell my students right away, don't talk about the past as if it were the present or the future. as I don't know that that would click right away, at least not without an extended conversation. But I think people, they can realize what is self-limiting to one degree or another. I guess there is that sense of, I think an important reason why that resonates, at least to me, is that I've let go of the idea that I see the world as it is, and I'm much more on the idea of, like, the experience of the world makes what you see. That a bit like the medium is the message, is who's that, Marshall McLuhan's framing, right? The medium is the message, and it's a bit like the medium of your own brain changes everything that you perceive. You aren't really seeing the world. It's like you don't really have access to the world, and I think kids really see things that way. Of this is the world out there, and I'm experiencing it exactly as it is. So if I can't do this physics problem, I'm never going to be able to do it, because this is how it is, and I've just observed that. So it's almost like you tell them, like, to deny their own direct experience, but they don't realize that you make the experience.
You can encourage them to challenge the belief that they can't do it. And in many respects, those young people that you're teaching, when you hear that their language is littered, this is a TDSLism, that Peter Truman, the co-founder of the Dialogue of Self-Liberation, he first coined that phrase. When listening to a group of other people speaking, he said their language was littered in relation to the core principle of the Dialogue of Self-Liberation. So if we hear in another person that their language may be littered because unconsciously they're speaking about self-limiting beliefs in that manner, where it becomes, for someone like yourself who's now been introduced to the Dialogue of Self-Liberation, you're able to spot these things. Before I was introduced to it, I hadn't got a clue. I had no clue how I was communicating toward myself, and I had or limiting myself through my self-communication, so I'll be more specific. And neither had I any idea how other people limit themselves in the way they communicate toward themselves. But after learning, after being taught this, it's become incredibly obvious to me. This is why we refer to the hidden epidemic of negative, self-defeating self-communication. It's an absolute hidden epidemic. So many people put themselves down and limit themselves, and they become attached to those beliefs and normalize those beliefs, and don't even realize they're doing it, like I did for a very long period of my life. I had no idea how much I'd been limiting myself and giving myself a hard time.
Right.
So those young people you're teaching are your teachers, because they're presenting you with a reflection of this hidden epidemic. So in many respects, you have a wonderful opportunity, Adam, to lead by example, not necessarily by telling them how they should or shouldn't be, but by exemplifying that you communicate to them, not based on what they can't do, but what they have believed they couldn't.
Right.
And it's a totally different context then. So yeah, you may have believed that you couldn't.
I want to write that down. Can you say that again?
I'm not sure whether I can remember word for word, but this interview will be, the recording of this will be put on the YouTube channel that we have. So maybe what I can do is I can paraphrase that, and I'll send it to you in a message afterwards. I'll send it to you in an email.
Okay, well, much appreciated.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So in your own experience, how would you describe the benefits of TDSL to a friend?
I guess I would say that you learn to recognize self-limiting communication in yourself and others, and that expands your potential as you can remove roadblocks to your own progression, and it also helps you put distance between the the emotions you're experiencing and maybe the limits they create. And just by giving you a practical tool to recognize self-limiting communication allows that distance between you and the feeling. And if there's distance, there can be mindful attention to do something with the observation. And that's a practical benefit you can experience in everyday moments.
That's a great description, Adam. Really wonderful. Thank you. That's lovely. This is what's really great about these interviews, is because each person is describing the experience or their understanding of the dialogue of self-liberation, uniquely filtered through the lens of their own experience. So the dialogue of self-liberation is, whilst it's the same principles, it's different for each individual. So the way people
Right.
are reflecting back their understanding and their experience is illuminating. It's wonderful to hear. I find this process fascinating. I'm learning all the time. So, you know, in many respects, you're my teacher. Yeah, very much so, genuinely so. It's a pleasure to hear you describe things in this way. So one of the things that we emphasize in the dialogue of self-liberation is the value of self-compassion and self-forgiveness. What are your feelings about these particular principles that we emphasize, and why we would emphasize them as we do?
I think that it came up a lot, that idea of self-compassion. And I think it's important in a number of ways. There was that you said in one of the calls something along the lines of like you can't grab something new if your hands are full. It was something you put it in nicer terms, but I understood that to be like if your hands are full with crap from who knows when, then you're never gonna grab the next thing. And if you're stuck on past mistakes and then you blame yourself and you kind of revisit that, you always look at that, you may not notice that you're holding on to something, but that is preventing you from doing something else. And it is a kind of self-imposed limit. I can't do this because I screwed up in the past, so that's it. And if you can put a little distance between that feeling and that thought, like, hang on a minute, I've not forgiven myself. I've not let go of that. I think it- it's like there is an emotional benefit to not letting yourself off the hook so that you can learn from an experience. Like if your conduct hurts someone else and you feel shame and remorse about that, then that emotional coloring hopefully will prevent a repeat of that behavior in the future. So that's useful. But it has like diminishing marginal utility, right? Is that economics principle? Like that helps initially, and it doesn't help as much again, and it helps less the next time and the next time. And if it's something that happened a decade ago, it's probably best to just, you're just self-flagellating, and maybe you're getting, it's like that, you know, that pleasure from like a nervous puff on a cigarette, right? You get a little boost of something, but it's not good. So it's best to just let go. I think there is some, the difficulty, and I think the reason why, one reason why some may find that self-compassion difficult is that genuine concern of, you don't want to let go of the, you want to forgive but not forget. It's maybe the way to put it. You don't want to lose the lesson you learned in making some blunder, but you do want to lose the shackles they've given you. I hope that's coherent.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with regard to letting go of the shackles, do you feel that the dialogue of self-liberation allows for this process to take place when a person begins to apply the principles? How useful do you
Yes,
feel it is in achieving that?
I think it's you get that skill set of paying attention to your own speech. So if you say things like, I can't do that, or I'm always gonna screw this one up, and you become sensitive to those kinds of patterns, you can then take action in that. If you notice, it's almost like you then have to, actively want to keep it going. Like, I always screw this up. I noticed I said that. It's much harder to say, and I want to. I want to keep screwing it up. It's like, well, probably not, right? Probably once you notice you said it, it's like, well, I don't have to screw it up again the next time. I think that tends to be a progression, unless you're in I guess really down in the dumps. But then I don't see it. What would be the other way out other than note? One way or another, you have to notice yourself that you're doing these things. So I think any techniques that will help you become aware. I think it's similar. I be careful not to say like TDSL is just like this or just like that, but it does seem like in any mindfulness practice, there's some confluence of principles of just witness what's going on. And I think in maybe for most people who have some degree of psychological health, just noticing something that isn't beneficial is already putting you well on your way to getting rid of it.
I agree with you to a point, but then I feel that in many cases we are encouraged in various philosophies or other methodologies for becoming aware, to help us to become aware of those times where we might limit ourselves or have self-limiting thoughts or beliefs. But then we're not really taught what to do with it. So we can observe it, but we're not shown or taught what to do to let that go.
Right.
And so in many philosophies and we hear very often that we're encouraged to live in the present, to be here now,
Right.
to let go of the past. But we're not really taught how to achieve that. So how would you feel that the dialogue of self-liberation addresses this?
Well, I was I was going to ask you just that. because I don't really remember if there was a practical tool there. I remember it saying self-forgiveness, be self-compassionate. But what are the steps there? I've forgotten them.
Well, really, firstly is the mindfulness of self-communication. That's the noticing what we've been communicating toward ourselves, and developing the skill of monitoring what we're actually communicating toward ourselves from moment to moment, so that we then identify the things that are worth letting go of. Self-limiting beliefs, habits, patterns, reactions, and so on. This is the first step, but then every aspect of everything to do with the different stages in the 5 dialogues in the live program address many things. We address the specificity of words which we use, the hidden meanings and implications in the words we would use when we communicate toward ourselves about ourselves, or when we communicate toward other people about ourselves. Because very often we say things, but we don't realize the true implication of what we're saying. So we go into a lot of detail about the specificity of the words that we would use, very often unconsciously, and how limiting those words can be. So that we no longer program ourselves in unconsciously self-limiting ways through our self-communications. Then also we emphasize the harnessing and the development of the use of our creative imagination to transform our feelings and associated with self-limiting beliefs and habits and patterns, so that our imagination is something which serves us rather than hinders us.
So can I run through like a hypothetical?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
So you have some past blunder which you carry around, and you've not forgiven yourself about it, and then you train yourself to recognize the self-limiting thoughts and communication you have about that event with yourself. And then over time you notice with greater and greater subtlety the words and phrases you associate with said event, and you begin to recognize it's self-limiting. And through creative visualization you can then recolor the kind of emotional tinge you have on said event. And then as that happens, it is then more easy to let it go. And then Peter talked about that, like applying purposeful attention.
Absolutely.
So at some point you have to kind of decide, like, I need to let this said event that happened in the past go, and with that purpose, that eventually begins to take place. Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely accurate. Yes, and it's a process. It takes a while for us to learn how to no longer keep replaying those old hurtful, painful, self-limiting memories, or memories or even imaginings about a future in which we continue to beat ourselves up or believe that we deserve to suffer, or that we're not good enough, or that we'll never be good enough, because something may have happened to us in the past to trigger such a belief.
Do you what's your take on, do you think you get it's been proposed by others that a lot of the times people hold on to unhealthy patterns because they get some how would you put it, they get some benefits. In other words, just like that initial cigarette puff, it's bad, but you get some little, like you mentioned in the dialogues, that kind of like, what was it, pride, like a kind of pride of
Absolutely. Pride in our
Like,
suffering.
right. And I guess, do you find it helpful to notice those kind of hidden, I don't want to say benefits, but some kind of dopamine hit somewhere in there that gives you the sense of like, oh, I want to keep on to this because I am getting something from it, even if the net is negative.
Yeah, they're sometimes referred to as secondary gains. So an example I would give is, say, somebody who had been diagnosed as agoraphobic with a fear of open spaces. A secondary gain may be for someone like that they don't go out, therefore everyone else feels sorry for them and they do their shopping for them and bring them everything. So they don't have to go and do it themselves. That could be a secondary gain, hypothetically. So there's also the if you like, the pride in suffering, where people have become so used to talking to everyone about how bad they feel because they get sympathy. And sometimes people get lost in such a pattern to the point where they would say things to themselves like, how could anyone possibly understand the pain I'm going through? Like their pain is worse than anything anyone else in the whole world could possibly imagine. And of course, for them, it is at the time. But really, what we're focusing on here is identifying things that we're really fed up with. If we're fed up of dragging around the weight of the past just because we may have made mistakes in the past, or because we would have had experiences of abuse that were totally outside of our control due to someone else's ignorance or outright abuse. Rather than dragging that around, if we're fed up with carrying that weight, it gets to the point where we recognize that we're fed up with it. We're fed up with carrying that. So then to continue to morbidly attach ourselves to a perceived kick or a thrill that we would feel from such suffering just causes stagnation. We don't really grow. We just get stuck in the same loops, talking or communicating toward ourselves and anyone else who will listen about how bad it is, how bad things are, how bad things always will be. How stuck we are, how much, how depressed we are, how low we are. You know, and in many cases, people don't talk to other people about that particularly. I was a great example of this for 20 years of my life. I didn't really go on to people telling them that I was low. Only when I was on my own, in my own self-communications for 20 years of my life, I did exactly that. I was very stuck because of certain things that happened to me in my past. And I had no idea that I was stuck in loops, self-defeating patterns of self-communication, until my teacher helped me to identify them. And then he helped to teach me how to let go of the habit of communicating in those ways. And that information that he shared with me is what we are sharing with people like yourself on the Dialogue of Self-Liberation live program. And the information has completely transformed my life for the better on every level. On every level. We deserve better, us human beings, than to unnecessarily persecute ourselves or torment or torture ourselves. The history of the world, of humanity, is so full, overfull of suffering. Surely it needs to get to the point where humanity as a whole deserves better. We as individuals deserve to let go of the habit of either causing suffering to others or causing suffering unnecessarily toward ourselves. This is why we emphasize self-forgiveness and self-compassion, because then they naturally, when we take the time and the care to develop self-forgiveness and self-compassion, these qualities naturally begin to radiate outwardly, and they naturally flow and turn into genuine compassion for others and for the world in general, the planet that we are sharing our existence as a part of.
I forgot about how important that word necessary is. I thought about that a lot in some of the dialogues, about how you think you need it, but you need some. I get there's like a gut. I think a gut level understanding of, like, everyone knows that on some level, if you struggle a little bit, you do get growth from that. And there's that old saying, like, you only gain wisdom through suffering. And there is truth to that, but I think there's that piece of, like, how much of it is necessary? And it's like, if some event happens, it marks you in a certain way, it causes suffering, and then you can certainly grow from that experience, and then maybe you needed a bit of that suffering to get you to this new point, but then you don't need to keep self-flagellating 15 years later. That's clearly not needed. And even sometimes, like, if I have to, I tell my boy not to do something, creating some mischief. What's needed, like, I may in the past have overreacted and shouted or been loud or whatever. And maybe all that is needed is just one word, one calm word stop. That may be all you need, right? But what you end up doing, in the past, you may overreact. I have overreacted in the past, and then afterwards, then you kind of say, like, well, he shouldn't have done that, clearly. So it's good that I put a stop to that. But really, all that was needed was just a little correction. That was the necessary part, and then there's a whole lot of unnecessary suffering, like kids crying his eyes out because I yelled at him, and then I feel it, and then I have felt shit in the past having done that, and then another kind of bullshit, like, justification, like, well, it's good I made the kid feel like dog shit because he really shouldn't have done that, and then none of that is needed. That just colors the next period of time. So I do that a piece of, like, what's necessary. I think that's useful to hold on to that idea, what's really needed.
I totally agree with you, and I think that as a parent and as a teacher, you have a wonderful opportunity to lead by example, because by choosing to take the time and to engage in the ongoing process of optimizing your own self-communications, how you communicate toward yourself, and engage in the continuous shedding of the unnecessary weight of the past.
Right.
To free yourself so that you can be present authentically as you are now, having learned the lessons from past experiences, then you have a wonderful opportunity to help your son, for instance, to learn how not to limit himself in the way he communicates toward himself.
Right.
Leading by example, because you have done the necessary work within yourself, so you understand it. Filtered, the it I'm speaking about is the core principle of the dialogue of self-liberation. Filtered
Gotcha.
through the lens of your unique experience, Adam, yours and yours alone. You're unique in this entire world. There's no one else like you in this whole world but you. So what the dialogue of self-liberation becomes for you is uniquely filtered through the lens of your own experiences. So how you communicate this, how you communicate to others will change as a result of the work you're doing within yourself. Because why limit others or be harsh and judgmental toward others in the way we communicate toward them unnecessarily?
Right. And it does kind of, it kind of feeds on itself, right? So it's,
Mm,
you tend to be with the same people. So if your communication about yourself and to them is
mm.
healthier, that comes back, and then you get healthier communication back, and that
Absolutely, yes. It
uh,
makes a huge difference. And sometimes the people that we're communicating with, they don't quite understand what's different, but they feel there's a difference.
right,
Because what we're not doing is saying to maybe someone who we've known for a long time, you always do this, or you never do that. You never do the washing up. You see what I
right,
mean? Talking about the past as if it were the future.
right.
And none of us like to be accused of things. But if
No,
these things are phrased more appropriately in relation to time, then the person who we're communicating with doesn't any longer feel that they're being pushed or prodded or poked
right,
in the now,
right. No one wants that.
or accused of something in the future.
Right. How do you defend yourself against, oh, it didn't happen
Yeah,
yet? It's like,
yeah, exactly. But people do this all the time, unconsciously. They say these things to their partners, their husbands, their wives, their kids, their brothers and
right,
sisters, you know,
right.
their colleagues at work.
It's like you're making a prediction, and then yeah, don't talk about the past if it were the present or the future. And if you're predicting, you're talking about the future.
Mm,
Whereas and it doesn't have to mean ignore the past. Like you can say, like, there is a high likelihood this person will not do the washing up because they have not done it in the past. So therefore, in the now, I will take steps to increase the likelihood that this person does the washing up, because I can pay attention to what has occurred in the past. But I don't have to state my prediction that unequivocally they're never going to do the washing up. And in a way, that really, it gets you off the hook. And when you say you never do it, it's like, well, they never do it, and I never have to take any steps to encourage to fix the situation, because this is a fixed. This person's that way, so
mm.
I'm off the hook. I don't have to do anything. This is just the way it's raining. It's the way it is. Uh, it's a kind of laziness.
Yes, it doesn't allow for growth, does it? That way of
No,
communicating. So really, we owe it to ourselves, I feel, to really develop the understanding of how important what we say actually is, because we are conditioning ourselves and we're
right,
conditioning other people's reactions through how we communicate with them, particularly as a parent, with a child that you're guiding and teaching.
right.
So you know, we emphasize passing the baton, and you know, you're in a wonderful position to do this. And this is a process. The dialogue, the development of the dialogue of self-liberation is a process,
Right,
and the process takes time for us to, if you like, wean ourselves off of how we have communicated toward ourselves habitually, maybe for a long time. As we begin to no longer do that, the new default starts to develop.
right.
And this just
It's
takes a consistent effort over time, Adam, really.
it's good we've got the WhatsApp group.
Yes, it
There's
is. Yes. Yeah,
a
we have
little
our
kind of reminder.
community call we're about to do in starting in February, on the 13th of
Right.
February, and this is going to be a regular thing where all the people who've been through the live program have an opportunity to gather together, as well as people who haven't yet been through the live program but are interested in the subject matter and would be interested in joining us in the conversation and the dialogue that we share with each other about these topics, because it's a deep subject. The more we look, the more we realize there is to discover, because everyone communicates. Everybody
Right.
does. We all do. And very often we communicate very poorly toward ourselves and others. And this is what we are wanting to remedy. We want to address this so that more people in the world are introduced to the information so that they can transform how they communicate toward themselves. So they develop more self-compassion and therefore more compassion in the world in general.
Right. It's a bit,
So,
I mean, yeah.
what were you going to say? Please go ahead.
Oh, sometimes I feel it's like kindergarten rules. Like you're told this explicitly in kindergarten, all of this, and then you never hear it again. You're told, like, when you're 5, 3, 4, 5, you're told in school systematically, like, be nice, play nice, say sorry, like, everything's okay, like, now it's tidy up time. And then it's like you assume everyone implicitly assumes, like, this is baby stuff, so it's like, we've already mastered it, and you go on. But it's not how it works. Like, really, you need to develop those skills continuously. And it's not like you had it figured out as a 5-year-old. That was just that first, like, initial drop to just teach you how to be a human being. And then it's like you need that, but it doesn't really get addressed directly. In many contexts, I think of, certainly not in school, it's very much on the side for after kindergarten. You don't really see it.
Yeah, I think that unless a child, say a 5-year-old, unless they've had the misfortune to be born into a dysfunctional family or with parents with problems or abusive parents, generally speaking, 5-year-olds believe they're invincible.
Right.
It's like they think that they're like superheroes,
Right.
until they have certain experiences that cause them to doubt that. And then we have more experiences that would cause us to doubt that. And then we lose sight of, after a while, that feeling that we had of, like, actually, I'm really enjoying being me. They don't even think about
Right.
that. They're just too busy being themselves and having fun.
Right.
Open and receptive and engaging in everything.
Right.
Totally present. And so in many respects, what we're focusing on in the dialogue of self-liberation is the removal of the clutter which has accumulated through challenging experiences in life, so that we arrive back at a more authentic experience of who we actually are, because we are not the clutter that's accumulated. That's not us.
Do you think there is an us? There is a self?
Yes.
You do
Yes, I
think
do.
so?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do. But I think that the sense of self can extend significantly beyond our normal human perceptions in terms of the connectedness or the interconnectedness of our consciousness and the consciousness of everything else which is living. This is a much deeper philosophical conversation, which maybe we can look into these kind of topics within the community calls from time to time, because the subject matter we're dealing with really is about consciousness and perception, isn't it? And I find the subject is so vast that it's difficult to just touch upon in this way.
Right.
In this particular call we're having now. But I think that's a very interesting point you raised there, and one that would be interesting to explore further as a group, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it then.
Thank you. I have one final question for you, please, Adam, and it's this. What would you say to someone who was considering joining the TDSL live program?
Well, I would say try it because it's worthwhile. And then there comes a point where you can only do so, you can only do so much sales pitch in terms of selling a potential experience. So I think for people that I'm close to, I would just tell them this is something worthwhile doing. So if you want to take your own self-communication seriously, then give it a whirl. And I don't think you will regret it. And I think that's for me, that was enough. Different people needed different triggers and pulls. That was what Peter told me. This is something worthwhile doing, and I have some respect for him and his views in the world. So for me, that was enough of just, you say this is worthwhile. He said, like, I really think you'll get something out of it. It's like, I'm going to take that at face value, and I'll give it a try. That would be how I approach it, but other people may need different pulls.
That's wonderful, Adam. Thank you. There's a lovely bird song I can hear just outside your window. I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah. The sun's up, so they're at it.
That's a lovely sound. So yeah, I think that's all really for the interview. And thanks ever so much for taking the time to speak like this. It's very helpful, you know, because people are going to be watching this, and your honest reactions are going to be helping other people to ask themselves maybe more deeply, how have they been communicating toward themselves? And hopefully this can inspire other people to make the decision to learn how to let go of the weight of the past and to move forward, no longer carrying that stuff.
Well, thank you, Sheen, for setting up the program. Firstly, I've grown from it. I hope, and I hope to continue to grow from it. And thanks for doing this interview. Just selfishly, this has helped me kind of process and think about the last couple of weeks. We kind of finished
That's
those
great.
calls, and then I'd go to bed because they were kind of late. And then it's helpful to just say the things out loud and kind of
have some
repackage
feedback.
and rethink everything that's happened.
Yeah, you're most welcome. It's a pleasure, Adam. It's very good to meet you.
Well, be well. I hope we can meet and be in the same room at some point in the future.
I look forward to this very much. I dare say that I will be taking a trip to Cambodia at some point, and I really look forward to that. I look forward to that day. That would be a really lovely experience. So I really look forward to that, and I wish you a great day.
Be well. Have a great night.
Thank you, mate. Bye bye.